We would like to acknowledge the Yuggera people and the Turrbal people as the traditional custodians of Meanjin, the lands on which we record this podcast today. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. Hello and welcome to another episode of For the Health of It, a podcast made for healthcare professionals by a nurse on the inside. So my name is Jess Tully and I'm the brand ambassador of Healthcare Australia and your podcast host today. And today I have a really exciting episode. So I have got a dietitian on with us today to give us tips and tricks on how to eat healthier as a healthcare worker, because we tend to look after patients so much better than we look after ourselves, and we need to take care of ourselves better. So we've got Simone on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us, Simone.
No worries, anytime.
So excited for this podcast. I have a bazillion notes written down, so many questions that we're going to dive into, but I would love to know a little bit about you and your background, working as a dietitian. Take it away.
Alrighty, so I actually only graduated from my dietetics course in 2019. So before that, I actually wanted to be a lawyer, so completely opposite fields. But yeah, then once I started, didn't really love it. So went into dietetics. I've worked in aged care mostly. So as soon as I graduated, I went into aged care. I did do a placement on aged care, which I loved. Then I worked in hospital for a bit, found that wasn't quite the right fit for me, and so now I'm full-time in aged care, and I just really like the diversity of what we get to do. We see patients, see clients, so work clinically, but then we do things like menu reviews and articles, and then have opportunities to do things like this podcast. So it's just a real varied field, so it keeps it interesting.
So good. I can't believe you're a lawyer before this, or studying to be a lawyer.
I studied. I didn't get there. Didn't like it.
So different. I always find as a healthcare worker myself, saying I don't even know how to say it. Dietetics. How do you even say it?
Yeah. Dietetics.
Yeah, it's like when you say anaesthetist or something. Like it's like one of those things that just it doesn't roll off my tongue. But
yeah,
I used to be like, I will say with.
Yeah, I used to be like, I'm doing nutrition, dietitian, dietetics. I'd be like, yeah, I'd mumble it all the time, and it was like my course, and I didn't know.
Oh God. Well, I haven't been exposed to a lot of dietitians. I mean, I do a little bit in my role as a healthcare worker because I work as a nurse. We always do our referrals, but then I never actually see the interaction between a dietitian and a patient because I'm usually doing other things when you're doing your review of the patient. So it's something that even for me being in healthcare for 10 years now, I don't really understand your role, to be quite fair.
Yeah, okay.
What is the role of a dietitian? So are you helping? So I know you're working with the elderly mainly in aged care. Are you just helping them hit protein targets, making sure they're not, dealing with malnutrition? Is that your main focus?
Yeah, so within aged care, a lot of it is malnutrition because I guess that's the big issue for the elderly, especially living in residential aged care facilities. Quite often, new residents, when they come in, they're quite malnourished because they've kind of, lost that capacity to do things for themselves at home. And so then end up, quite not so well off when we get to them. But the other things that we do are, people who have uncontrolled diabetes, people who have, wounds is another really big one in aged care that people don't often refer for because they don't, I guess, realize the correlation of nutrition and, optimal wound healing. So that's another one that I'm always, ambassador, please refer if they do have wounds that aren't healing well, because there is often a dietary component that can help out. But yeah, like I said, mainly malnutrition, other things GIT issues. So if someone's got IBS, another big one that we find in aged care is that people just want to talk to us. It's because they don't like something they're getting. We quite often get mistaken for speech pathologists. So I will often have not for speech pathologists, but for the role that the speech pathologist does. So I'll quite often have someone be like, I want to speak to the dietitian, and I'll go have a chat to them, and they'll be like, oh, I don't like, my modified texture diet, and I want to be upgraded. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I'm not going to be able to do anything about that. I can refer you on, but that's about as, far as I can get. But we do also work a lot with the modified texture diet to make sure people who are needing that diet for, safety, that they are getting foods that they're still enjoying, because quite often it is monotonous and, I don't think anyone really wants to be eating pureed foods, but we make the most of it. So
especially in a hospital environment when the pureed diet comes out, I'm like, I try and get really excited for the patient, like, ooh, what are we eating today? Then I'm like, I don't know what that
Yeah,
is.
yeah, like, I couldn't tell you.
And they just look
Yeah,
at me
so
like, oh God, I have to eat this again. So yes,
yeah,
I definitely feel it. And also the hydration aspect, like trying to get, especially even just us as adults, I think just like getting
mm,
us to drink is already such a battle. But I
yeah,
think the
100%.
elderly, because they don't want to go to the toilet, because they have weaker bladder issues and things like that. And they don't
Yeah,
want to go to the toilet. But then if they don't drink, they're not going to use their bowels very well. And like, there's just all these, it's just in a full circle, isn't
yeah,
it?
it really is, and especially like I find a lot of like sort of patients that I see will be like, I don't drink after a certain time, otherwise I'll be up all night in the bathroom, and it's like, oh, well, you're drinking like quite a bit during the day, and they're like, no, and it's like, okay, and especially as I was saying about the modified texture diets, when you have to, I guess, eat your water with a spoon, it definitely
Mm.
kind of
I wouldn't be drinking much. I wouldn't be drinking much
yeah,
water if I had to
I'm
drink
like,
it in
you
a
know
spoon.
what? Like, I don't know what I can say to you because I kind of agree. Like, I'm going to give you advice, but I don't know whether I would be taking it. So it's a bit of a tricky one, but we do our best to, work with them.
Perfect. Well, we're forever going to need dietitian. That's for sure. You guys do
Yeah.
such an important role. I would love to kind of go into this episode and talk about like how we as healthcare workers can take care of ourselves. Because I mean, you've
Mhm.
already said a couple of points now that's actually reminded me as a healthcare worker, like, oh yeah, like when you said speech pathology gets confused with dietitians, I was like, I can see that. And
Yeah.
wound healing, that was a really important part as well. Like, and that's a good reminder for us to be like, oh, let's do a referral because that wound is looking really nasty or manky and it's just not healing. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good points. But I want to kind of bring this episode and finally not talk about the patients because that's what we always bang on about because that's what we do as healthcare workers. I want to focus on the
Yeah.
healthcare workers ourselves and how we can take better care of ourselves. I
Yeah.
find, you know, I can go into a morning shift and not even have breakfast and not eat
Mhm.
the whole day. And then there'll be like a tray of chocolates in the middle of the tea room and I'll just smash a couple of them and then continue working. And that's all I've eaten until 3:30, 4 p.m., which is
Yeah.
so unhealthy, but we do it. And we don't drink any
Yeah.
water because we're too busy. And I just want to go through like some tips and tricks and how can we do it? Like, how can we take better care of ourselves?
I think especially for shift workers, and I think as nurses especially, I don't have this problem as much being a dietitian, but I think nurses, doctors, people who are working overnight, like it can be so hard. But I think routine is really the best thing that you can do for yourself. So stick to a routine. So try to eat within an hour of waking up. If you are running really late, or that you just don't have time in the morning, you can't peel yourself up out of bed, like that's, I guess, common for all of us, especially going into winter. But prep something from the night before, something that you can eat on the go. Like most people have some sort of commute into work, so something that you can do while you're driving or on the bus. Just so that you have something in your stomach, and then trying to eat every 3 to 4 hours after that. So when you have a break, make the most of it and have some sort of meal. Um, it'll stop you from then being like, I'm so hungry. And then when you finish your shift at 3:30 or whatever time you finish your shift, just eating everything in sight and then, just kind of binging on everything. Because I know I'll do that if I have a day where I'm just busy and just haven't got around to eating. Then I get home and it's like, nothing is safe. I will eat anything and everything. And yeah, so I think keeping to a routine, and it'll also stop if you don't have breakfast. Then exactly right. There's often in hospitals things like vending machines, cafeterias. People bring chocolates in. There's always a birthday that there's a cake or there's something around, and you're likely to just kind of hoover into that rather than actually getting in what you need.
It's so true. And it's so funny because when you work in healthcare, like we don't bring in healthy snacks at all. Like it's always
No.
cakes and chocolates because it's either someone's birthday, like someone's going on holiday or someone's a really good baker or hospital guests or patients will bring in, gifts, which is chocolates. And
Yeah.
it's just you're surrounded by this stuff. And if you're like
Yeah.
so hungry, you just go for it. And I feel
Yeah.
so, if I do go through a shift and I haven't eaten properly, by the time I do eat, that sluggish feeling is absolutely
Yeah.
terrible. And I know that it's because I haven't been eating properly and I haven't been eating like every couple of hours. Do you
Yeah.
have any like good like breakfast recommendations that are good for like a shift worker?
Yeah, so if you, like I said, if you're kind of time poor, things like making like overnight oats from the night before that you can like take in a little like container or jar, quite quick to eat, good source of, if you put like yogurt, milk, good source of carbohydrate and protein. So that's a really good thing. You can, know a lot of people kind of get bored with the same flavor over and over, but there's so many different varieties. Like Google overnight oats and you will have like 20 million different, varieties. So you can add like lots of different fruits. People add things like, chia seeds or peanut butter. So things to, make it a bit fun and not feel like you're just eating oats every day.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like wraps that you can take on the go, sandwiches, even like a toasty is completely fine. Like use whole grain bread, kind of low fat cheese, add some sort of protein in there.
Yeah.
Anything like that is perfect, and it's something that you can literally eat as you're driving, or like, not that I recommend eating while you're driving, but it's something that you can like really eat on the go, and it's quite quick. And if you are that time poor, you can kind of make your toasty the night before and then just toast it in the morning, and it's as you're getting dressed or anything.
So good.
Yeah.
Love it. I used to have like a lot of because I do get in phases. Sometimes I'm really amazing and really good, and then sometimes I'm just slack, which we all are.
Yeah,
but I love
100%.
doing I love doing mini wraps and then getting boiled eggs and cutting them up and then putting egg into a little mini wrap because it actually just fits in one hand and you can just go
and perfect, and you're just like eating it as you
and then you're getting some egg in you, protein, keeps you fuller for longer. What about snacks? I guess because when you're a shift worker, sometimes you don't have the luxury of sitting down, putting food in a microwave and actually enjoying a meal. Sometimes you have scattered breaks. So sometimes you'll have 8 minutes free where you can just scoff something down because a patient's coming back from theatre, or so sometimes you're supposed to have a 30-minute break, but sometimes they are scattered or you don't get one. Do you have any I guess like meal recommendations that are good that you can just kind of grab and throw into your mouth that it's easy to prep and just like easy to go for?
Yeah. So again, something like a wrap or a sandwich is pretty easy, quite quick. The other thing would be like things like, tin of tuna on like crackers or rice cakes. Things like they have in like Coles and Woolies, the like little tins of like tuna and bean mixes. So something like that. You really don't have time. Anything kind of that, exactly like you said before, some like boiled eggs. Sometimes, as bad as it sounds, it's like whatever you can get in. So if you only have a few minutes and you really are unprepared, something like a yogurt and some fruit, not obviously the best lunch, but at least it's, something that's got, your carbohydrates, it's got your protein, sort of something that will keep you going until you have that time to have a better meal, I guess.
Yeah. I actually put now because I've got a little lunchbox, and I actually put a little frozen pack in there, like a little ice pack, because I always forget to put my food into the fridge from my lunchbox because I get distracted talking and I just want to, start work. So then I know that when I'm like wanting to eat, I'm like, usually I get it and I'm like, oh no, now my yogurt's all hot and disgusting, and then I don't want to eat it.
I don't want to be.
So it's like a good backup to be like, oh no, it's still nice and cold. It is okay. And like those bean mixes you were talking about, there's like a chickpea brand that I've seen. It's like in Coles and Woolworths, and they're like flavored with like olive oil, garlic, and stuff like that. They're yum.
Yeah, they're actually really good, and so they're a good option as well, especially if especially for vegetarians or someone who's not a fan of fish. I find that those are probably better alternatives because I know you can get sort of like chicken and things like that in a can, but personally I don't particularly like that.
It kind of creeps me out a little bit, chicken in a can.
Like it's not, I've had people sort of say, oh, have you tried it? And I was like, okay, I've got to go buy it. I've got to go see what this is about, and it's it's not something that I would eat. Like, each to their own. Everyone likes what they like. I don't judge what anyone's eating. But I probably wouldn't. So I think the chickpea one is still really tasty. It doesn't kind of compromise this sort of quality. Like I find the chicken doesn't really have that same quality as like proper chicken. Whereas chickpeas obviously hold really well. Quite similarly, like tuna's fine in a can. So
true. While we're on the topic of like, I guess, choosing canned food and things like this, we touched on when we were talking about this podcast and getting it all organized is the Yuka app, and it's called YUKA. That app was a life changer for me.
Yeah.
How do you use it personally yourself as well?
I don't use it too much. I tend to be a little bit from what I've learned at uni, I kind of just read the back of packages.
Yes.
So, one of those things, and I like to always, I'm one of those people who's always likes to, pick out and be like, ha, they got that wrong or whatever. So I'm just a bit annoying. Um, but no, I think it's a really, really great app. And I think the important thing to note with any of I genuinely think it's fantastic. I've downloaded it and kind of seen what it's about, and it's great. But I think what people kind of get caught up in is that they'll be like, oh, I feel like cake, or I want something, sort of naughty, and they'll then go and scan all these cakes trying to find the best one. And I think it's something that so many people have actually told me, they're like, oh, but so and so app said that this was a great cake. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still cake. If you want cake, go get a good quality cake, enjoy it, just eat the cake rather than, trying to find a healthy cake that you can, binge on. It's like, no,
Yeah.
just go eat a nice piece of cake. So I think that app's really great for looking at things like, cereals, because there's so many cereals on the market that and so many that have all these health benefits listed, and then you look at it and it's like it's full of sugar, it's full of this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good app to compare healthy foods.
Yeah.
So look for good breads, good cereals, but not necessarily to look for kind of those sweeter foods. The other thing is that I find that so an example that I have was that a particular brownie brand of No Shoe came up as an excellent choice, but then a yogurt actually came up as a poor choice. So it's take everything with a bit of a kind of pinch of salt, and use your common knowledge. Obviously, a yogurt is going to be healthier than a brownie, so things
Yeah.
like that. But I do really like the app, and I do think it definitely has its place as long as you use it sort of with that common sense aspect of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. So
Yeah.
if the listeners don't know what we're talking about, Yuka is an app. And I was having a look online to make sure I was saying the right terminology, but it looks at 3 objective criteria. So it looks at the nutritional quality, the presence of additives, and also the organic aspect of it. So when something has a barcode, you can scan it and it will grade it as bad, good, excellent, or poor. There's 4 categories. And obviously when it's red, it's quite bad, and it actually highlights the additives in red. So some of them are hazardous, and then you look at the additives in it. But I know personally myself, I turn the packaging over and I look at the back, but we're only really looking at the fat and the sugar and the protein aspect of it. And we don't actually look at the ingredient list, because I wouldn't know what any of those ingredients are. Something might sound like a really bad ingredient to me, but it actually is a good ingredient, because I don't have that knowledge at all.
Yeah.
Even being a healthcare worker, I don't have that knowledge. And I found this app was really great in terms of bread and stuff. So, you can scan some breads and it will highlight, this has a lot more sugar in it. This has a lot more preservatives and additives in it, where this bread is excellent and has all these extra positives about it. So yeah, just in terms of choosing better quality products, it's really helped me, because some of my products in the fridge, for example, tomato sauce, we just think, oh yeah, just grab a tomato sauce. We're very Australian, love tomato sauce, right? But then some brands you scan and they are packed full of sugar and additives. And then there are other brands that are just a lot healthier for you, a lot better for the body. So it's just about swapping those brands to have better quality products. So I loved it. I threw everything in my house that wasn't a green Yuka product.
Yeah, fair enough. And it's so true, because there is generally I kind of say with ingredients lists, if there's lots of, I think things like bread and things like any sort of packaged good, there's always going to be sort of something that is I guess a emulsifier or something that you're not going to know exactly. But if the list is as long as your arm, then it's okay, and if it's a lot of ingredients that you just have no clue what they are, usually it's okay, there's going to be additives in this isn't going to be great. But exactly right, so many of the words, even me, I'll look at them and I'm like, some of them I know, and some of them I have no idea. That could be rat poison for all I know. I have no clue. So yeah, it is a really, really great app, and exactly like you said, using it for something like bread, and to compare that, because that is a staple product that you need to use. So I think it's a great product. Like I said, as long as you use it
for me.
for that sort of reason. Yeah.
I know you mentioned something, because I was talking to you about diet diaries, and you were talking about one called the Easy Diet Diary. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Easy Diet Diary is based on the database, which is Foodworks, which we use to analyze recipes if we're analyzing something for a menu or whatever it might be. So it does use I guess credible information. There are lots and lots of food diaries out there, but I think this one is really good because, like I said, it is from a like well-known database. Whereas things like MyFitnessPal or like those types, anyone can kind of add their own and it can kind of come up. So I think again, like any of them will work and it's what people prefer to use. And again, just kind of using that like bit of common sense. If you see, I think I was on MyFitnessPal once and it was like a Big Mac had, I don't know, like 5 calories or something. And it's like, okay, that's obviously, you
Who's put
use
that
common
in?
sense. You go, you're like, I don't think that's right. And then I think it was because the default was like by gram or something.
Right.
So it's like, just use, that bit of common sense, but so I think like any of them will work. But like I said, Easy Diet Diary is a really, really good one.
Yeah.
Really easy to use. You can kind of it's an app. So you just kind of click on like search whatever you want to add into your food, and it's got a really big list of kind of generic products. So
Okay.
if you don't know exactly, if you say buy a barbecue chicken and you're not really sure about it, like it's got a lot of, and yeah, it's got like a lot of options for like, is it grilled, is it like did you keep the skin on, like all of that sort of stuff, so you
Oh,
can
okay.
add
Yeah.
it in quite easily. The other good thing is that it does have the sort of gram measurements, but obviously we don't weigh every single thing we eat. So it's got sort of things like cups, so then you can kind of go, okay, yeah, I had about half a cup or whatever it is. And so really good app. And the other thing is that you can, if you are seeing a dietitian, you can send it to the dietitian for them to then download and kind of
Oh,
use
that's
it as a
handy.
report. So yeah, so good for if you are seeing a dietitian, but also great for personal use.
Yeah.
But I guess the thing is, and the message we kind of want to drive across is that you don't need to be keeping a food diary forever. Like I think it is that then dangerous one that then you become obsessed with it and you end up, kind of counting every single calorie. And it doesn't need to be like that. But it's really great for people who are starting off and who maybe aren't aware of the sort of mistakes that they are making throughout the day. That's kind of hindering their progress, or like, like I'm really hungry after lunch. I wonder why that is. And they realize that, their lunch has like no protein, no carbohydrate. And you go, okay, that's probably sort of why. Because I think like we were talking about before, people are quite health conscious and they do want to do what's best for their health, but there is so much misinformation about there. So you see someone, they're like, oh, I'm trying to eat healthy, and they're like, I just had a salad for lunch. And it's like, oh great, what was in your salad? And it was like lettuce, cucumber, tomato, like nothing in it. And it's like, that's not a salad, that's just a few vegetables thrown in a bowl. Like,
That's what people
it's
feed
got
their
no
rabbits.
exactly, that's rabbit food. So I think it is a great way to kind of just look at what you're eating and get a bit of I guess insight. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so good. I've used MyFitnessPal before, and I was trying to track, what I was eating during the day, but it wasn't a calorie focus at all. But there's a nutrient section. So you eat everything throughout the day, and then you click on nutrients and it tells you like things that you're missing out on, such as, potassium and sodium and all that stuff. And I was lacking a lot. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm not hitting protein targets, sodium targets, potassium targets. And it just makes you a little bit more aware. And I was like Googling like foods with more potassium and foods with more this, and just like being a bit more, I guess, conscious of like adding things to my plate. Like I'm going to add, a handful of spinach to this because I want more of, those nutrients. So yeah, definitely not forever, but it's really cool to track it just for a couple of days, just to kind of be a bit more mindful.
As you said. Yeah, it makes you that mindful, and then you're like, okay, I know that these are the foods that I should be adding in. And then once you've done it for a while, you're like, I know that, after you've tracked for a while, and once you kind of become a bit more aware of the foods that contain those nutrients, like you're like, okay, I ate whatever, you kind of remember what you eat.
Yeah,
and you go,
yeah,
okay,
you do remember.
I definitely wouldn't have hit that, or like, yeah, I did well today, I would have. So like, and you don't necessarily need to write it all down. You're going to know sort of off the top of your head.
So agree.
But yeah,
great. Yeah, it's so good to be
identify.
Just conscious of it as well. So I really, I'm a big fan of it. I would love to dive into hydration, because nurses are terrible at this. So terrible. Yeah. I try and get into the routine of having 500 mils before shift, because I know that during shift I'm going to be terrible, but I still bring a water bottle to shift and make sure I sip it throughout the day. But it just depends what kind of area that you work in, whether you're an allied health worker, whether you are a doctor, whether you are NDIS, caring for others and you don't have time. I know it's tricky, but is there any tricks that you know of to, I don't know, I guess be better with your hydration?
I honestly struggle with this as well. I'm often like when I'm on site, I always forget my water bottle in the car, or like it's, it's just something that I don't think of.
Mhm.
Especially I found, and this sounds so ridiculous, but when you're wearing a mask, like you get more thirsty, but for some reason it's like I'm just not going to take the mask off to drink.
Yeah.
And whether that's like sort of some type, like especially the beginning of COVID, it was something that, because I guess there was so much like hysteria that you do not want to get COVID and your insights, which, are exposed, you're like, I don't want to take this mask off. I'm going to go, 8 hours without putting a thing in my mouth because I'm not taking my mask off.
Yeah.
And I guess it's, settled down now, but it has got a lot of people into bad habits that they, kind of have stopped drinking. You know, again, like I think I've said to you, there is an app for absolutely everything. So
Yeah.
for some people, like downloading an app and you can tick off as you drink is a really great option. There's a water bottle that I actually have, and it's a Bluetooth bottle. And so every kind of meal that goes through the mouthpiece alerts my phone that I've drunk 40 mils of water or whatever it is.
That's cool.
Um,
That is
yeah,
so
and
cool.
so then it'll be like, you have not, you haven't drunk enough today. And so kind of, it sends you messages to remind you to have a drink. The other thing that I've seen is people buy like huge water bottles. So the general sort of everyone is different, depends on how active you are, depends on even like the weather, your size, water, the amount of water you need is going to be a little bit different. But general rules about 8 glasses or 2 liters.
Yeah.
So I've seen people buy the huge 2 liter water bottles, and then they know that they have kind of had their 2 liters for the day if it's finished, and you can kind of keep track of it. And I've seen a lot. Probably not one for the boys, but for the girls, like Sports Girl and stuff, has like the bottles that have like the little
Or the markings.
the markings that say,
Yeah.
like, you're doing really well, like keep going, keep drinking your water. So
good.
things like that.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
tips,
it can be
great
really
tips.
hard.
I try to
Yeah.
have a liter before lunch. Like in my head, I'm like a liter before lunch. And when I look at the clock and it's 12 and I look at my bottle and there's only 200 mils out of it, I'm like, okay, I am way behind today. So that's kind of like how I've always put it in my head, like a liter by lunch, and then from lunch to dinner time, another liter. And then I know, and I bring a 1 liter bottle with me so I can track the 1 liter. So that's how I've been doing it for years. And I have good days and bad days like we all do. But I did have, and this is what I was telling you before, is I have this hilarious like reminder to tell people to drink water. And it is actually quite disgusting, but it's good because it shocks people because they're like, oh, yuck. So I go, imagine your toilet. And imagine if you use the toilet all day to do poos and wees, but you do not flush the entire day. All right. You're doing poos, wees, no flushing the entire day. By the end of the day, that toilet is disgusting, right? You don't want to go near it. Pretty gross.
No.
The flushing aspect of flushing a toilet is us actually hydrating our bodies. So if we are not hydrating our bodies and putting, water into our mouth and drinking it, we are therefore not flushing our bodies. So we are doing exactly what is in that toilet. We're having toxic buildup, just constantly going and it's disgusting, right? But if we're not flushing out our body, you do. If you don't flush out your bodies, your kidneys, your liver, your intestines, all that, we're not filtering it. We're not flushing it. So it's the same aspect, the same concept as not flushing a toilet.
Yeah. I've never thought of it in that way, but I will definitely drink my water today now that I'm going to have that.
And I tell people, and I go, are you a dirty toilet today? I want you to drink more water.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, and then they imagine that dirty toilet and they're like, oh, yuck. Okay, I'm going to drink a liter.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to go scull some water now.
Yeah, it's so dirty and disgusting, but it really, it just triggers something in you. And when I tell people that, they're like, God, that's really stayed with me forever now.
Yeah, I honestly think that will stay with me forever. So thank you. I will be drinking more water.
You'll shock some patients with that one and then they'll drink more water.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is so good. Absolutely. This has been actually such an educational episode. I've had an absolute ball. Is there any other tips and tricks that you can think of that we didn't cover?
Yeah, fad diets. I think, like I said to you before, I think we've come a long way in that I don't see people coming in or people talking to me about, eating nothing but cabbage anymore. So I think, we have come a long way, but there is still that aspect that every couple of years there's, I guess, a trend on the way to eat. So whether it is, eating keto, or there was paleo a few years ago, or people, decided that they were unnecessarily cutting out gluten, or, just anything like that. It's like any type of, diet that is going to make you cut out full food groups, unless there is a condition. So like I said, with, gluten, if you're celiac, obviously you're cutting out gluten.
Yeah.
But, if there's no actual reason behind it, if you're, kind of healthy, you're functioning fine, any diet that is going to get you to cut out a certain food group and then gorge on another one, or, skip meals altogether, is something that is not ideal, and it's not, the sort of healthy. Like, I think people, as I said, like, try to do the best for their health and try to, eat well, and they just get confused with so much information out there and so much being bombarded at them. But it is quite simple. Most people might be aware of the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, and so it is just 5 food groups and then a group of sort of other foods, which is like sometimes foods, things you might have like once a week or, every now and then. So as long as you're eating sort of from the core food groups and eating like, the healthier varieties. So for example, sort of like in the grain food group is like bread, cereal, looking for whole grain breads, wholemeal, whole grain cereals, eating lots of fruit and vegetables. Try to eat things that, aren't in a packet necessarily. I think you're going to be doing a good job.
So good. Oh, thank you so much for all these amazing tips and tricks. I think so many people are going to get so much from this episode. I cannot thank you enough.
No problem.
Sounds so good. And everybody, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you've got any questions, you can flick me a message on Instagram. But please give us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and give me any feedback, and I can pass it on to Simone as well. So thank you so much again for joining us.
No worries.
No
worries. Bye.